Well, I want to welcome you all to this month's installment of our behavioral health webinar series. As I said, it's great to see some familiar names, and those of you that haven't joined us before, welcome. My name is Steve Steiny. I'm one of the managers here at the American Indian Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. I have on the call here with us my colleague Jeff Ledolter, as well as Kate Trams. Kate will be on initially and then be dropping off, but Jeff and I will be with you as we assist our fantastic presenter today, Mr. Kevin Tomlin, who I'll introduce momentarily. But want to just say good morning or good afternoon, depending on where this broadcast finds you. And we're really happy to have you all here with us today. We may have a few people joining a little bit later, but I'm really liking the size of this group. We might really be able to have a meaningful connection here as we learn more about motivational interviewing, and more importantly, get to practice a little bit of that, which sometimes you don't always get to do in trainings like this. So you guys are in for a real treat. Kevin Tomlin is here with us today to share some of his knowledge and ideas about the application of motivational interviewing. I have a few introduction slides to go over, and then we'll get started, okay? Again, it's great to see some familiar names and faces on the call today, and thank you for joining us. As most of you may know, this event is brought to you by the National American Indian Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. We are located at the University of Iowa, and I am broadcasting to you live from the College of Public Health on the University of Iowa campus. We are part of a larger ATTC network made up of 10 regional centers, a coordinating office at the University of Missouri, as well as a national Hispanic and Latino ATTC. The project and our webinars are supported by SAMHSA. It's important to note that the content is developed by the presenter and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the National American Indian Alaska Native ATTC, HHS, or SAMHSA. Following today's event, you will receive a follow-up email, which will include links to the presentation slides and a recording if applicable. And I know we are recording today, so we'll make a link to this broadcast available on our Native Center for Behavioral Health YouTube archive within a few days of conclusion of today's webinar. There'll also be 1.5 NADAC approved CEUs available. You can request these at the time that you receive your follow-up email, and we'll get those out to you in a timely manner. Lastly, there'll be a link to our short evaluation survey. This is less than 5 minutes. It's very important to our center that we get your feedback. So I'll also post a link to this survey today in the chat box if you'd rather just complete this before you sign off today at the conclusion of today's event. But we'll give you another chance to fill out this important survey in the follow-up email. As I said, it's important for us to hear back from you, and it also helps retain funding for future programs and broadcasts such as this. All the information you provide is private and confidential. You can skip any questions you would like, and none of your answers or information can be linked to you personally in any way. If you have any questions about that survey, please reach out to Jeff or myself or Kate here at the center. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I know we are gathered here virtually today, but we want to take a few moments to acknowledge the land and pay respects to the indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken and inhabited. Please take a moment to read this land acknowledgement, which was created by 3 members of our team, Ella and Keely Driscoll, and our co-director, Sean Baer. Thank you. Well, without further ado, I want to introduce my colleague and my friend, Mr. Kevin Tomlin. Kevin is part of the Cheyenne River tribe and is currently in Portland, unless he's changed locations and hasn't told me about this, but I believe he is broadcasting from the Portland area.
Correct.
Now, great. I got that part right, Kevin. We're really happy to have him here with us. He is currently working as an addictions therapist and participating in various ways with members of the MINT community, which is a motivational interviewing nationally recognized certification for motivational interviewing. Learning the ropes, becoming a high quality MI trainer, Kevin walked with several teachers in shaping his voice as a therapist, retreat leader, and speaker, drawing on these diverse traditions. Clinical training followed, and Kevin now focuses his energy on integrating this traditional spirit into professional practice. We're really happy to have Kevin here. I enjoy spending time with this gentleman. He has a lot of knowledge, and his teaching style is very engaging. So you're in for a treat. I'm going to pull my screen down, and I'm going to relinquish the floor to Mr. Kevin Tomlin. Kevin, happy to have you with us today.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see everybody. I'm going to put my slides up here on the screen. Steve, you can confirm that this is showing up correctly. Looks like it's a full screen. I think we're good. You're on mute, Steve.
Sorry, Kevin. Just go up and go to your display settings and just hit that display settings button at the top there. Yes, and then just swap. Just do swap presentation. There you go.
Oh, magical. Thank you.
Yes. Now you should. We're seeing the full screen. You should have your presenter view on your other
All right.
screen.
Perfect. Thanks very much. So, as Steve indicated, well, it said it in the bio that I actually cut my teeth doing retreats. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing here for a second and just talk. Part of the reason I was drawn to motivational interviewing as a way of helping people was that, first of all, I noticed I was in a profession where they kept saying over and over, we're in the change business. We help people change. And, when somebody says that to me as a novice, I think, well, I feel some pressure. Like, how am I going to help somebody change? How do you do that? What's the trick? How do you get them to do it? And I found out pretty quick that perspective could lead to all kinds of trouble, burnout, harm, people not changing. I stumbled across motivational interviewing through my relations, through my family. And my auntie, Kathleen Tomlin, is she's an addictions counselor in Oregon. And just to give you a sense of some history, like my addictions, my CADC number is like 3,8883 or something like that, big number. Her number is 12. So she's been in the field forever. Worked with the founder of MI in his research as he was developing motivational interviewing, and has just been involved in it from the get-go. And it's been just a very quiet, still quiet voice in, being careful to let me find my own way, because we're in overlapping professions. She didn't want to control it, but I figured out pretty quick. Kept hearing her name all over the place, and so when you find a person of wisdom, wear out their doorstep. And I just found what a gift it is to have a profession where I also have a family member who is working intimately with people in the same way that I want to. And she guided me toward this thing called motivational interviewing. And I didn't even understand the title at first. Like, it didn't make any sense. I'm a counselor. I don't do interviews. Isn't that for the media? It turns out it's like a technical term. The founder of MI even says nowadays, you'll hear him say, he doesn't publish it, but he'd pick a different name for it. If he had to reinvent it, he would call it something like, he doesn't say what words exactly because he gets quoted a lot. It's like chapter and verse, Bill Miller. His name's Bill Miller. But he says it's like conversations. That's what he means. Motivational conversations. The idea behind motivational interviewing is so simple. It's just the way that we are with another person in that kind of very specific interaction. That is, I'm like some sort of helper, be it volunteer, professional, whatever. I got a role where I'm going to help somebody to change. When that person comes to me, they're going to feel two ways about making that change. And that, therefore, the way that I approach them is going to be deeply influential in whether they change or not. So it comes out of a very person-centered history. That's just the training of the founder, Carl Rogers, person-centered counseling, with a very specific difference, and that is it is directive. And that's not always, advertised, right? That in motivational interviewing, it's guiding a conversation toward change. And it's almost like an art. So when we get into this, what we're going to do today, sharing it again. The goal is to just get centered, because part of our objectives today are just to have an experience of MI. So I'd like to start with just a mindfulness experience. If you'd be willing to just take some time, whatever you're doing, if you're like me, you're multitasking on Zoom, perhaps you can become aware of the invitation to monotask. And just take one task, and that is to breathe. I really appreciated the reading at the beginning of the introduction of this that draws us back to remember our ancestors. The things that matter the most. Including our breath, the very air that we breathe. Is it possible right now to become focused on one thing in this present moment? And just allow that to settle. You might become aware of feelings, emotions, thoughts. Are they related to what we're doing right now? Or are there invitations to think about other things? I'd invite you to just be with those non-judgmentally. Embrace them. And consider that those are invitations to make a change in your life. Very often, the things that we are preoccupied with are the things that could be inviting us to change. What is it about those things? I'd invite you to see if you can get call to mind things in your life that you might feel two ways about. Things in your life that you might feel like changing. These are not things you're going to share. This is just for you. It can be one thing, it can be a few things. You might even think of 2 or 3 things. They don't have to be big. Just things in your life that are important to you that you'd like to see a change. And consider that in this context, we're in the presence of 7 generations, backwards and forwards. We stand in the middle of a process that's guiding us somewhere, and that those are related to each other. And that really, when we talk about something like MI, motivational interviewing, we're talking about relations. That whatever it is I talk about today, that we do today, hopefully it will help us be better at making relations with one another. I hope. Okay, so I'm going to get into a little bit of, thank you for that, everybody. I want to get into a little bit of the objectives. These are the technical objectives that we will get to some of these. I doubt we'll get to this bottom one, though it may come up, especially if people have questions about it. But really, it's what makes motivational interviewing distinct. And this could be a review for many. The idea is to take this review and put it into practice. So here's the lightning round of MI. What is it? It is participant-centered. It is a way of communicating. If you are the professional, you are the guide in that conversation. You're helping participants find their own reasons to change. So we don't put it in them. They have their own reasons. They already know the answer. Really, it's about exploring and resolving their mixed feelings about that change. And for reference, motivationalinterviewing.org is the site, it's the homepage for the global network of people who are devoted to training this way of being, this kind of professionalized way of being. It's called the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, MINT. And coincidentally, this week, they are having their global forum. It's virtual, but it's amazing how many people are in that. And they are literally from every continent except for Antarctica. So it's a great resource. There's some free stuff on there, and really a lot of links that can point you in great directions, because obviously today we're just going to be touching the tip of the iceberg. This is a definition out of the book. Motivational interviewing is a person-centered counseling method for addressing the common problem of ambivalence about change. So there we have the big word. It starts with an A, ends with an E, and it's not abstinence. It's ambivalence. So my hope is I'm going to be able to share again a video just to give a little clue. I just like to show this video as a
Kevin, when you're setting that up, make sure you hit share audio.
got it.
Then
That's
we'll
right.
all be able
I
to
learned
hear
that
it.
from you a year ago.
Yes.
And then we go over here. So ambivalence, feeling 2 ways about something. I'm just going to play. This is 3 minutes long. 10 meters is about 30 feet. Okay. So just consider that these people have been paid in advance to go stand on a high dive and jump off if they want to. They don't have to. And they agreed to be filmed. And so here's a couple of buddies who are doing exactly that. Nice little example of ambivalence.
Here we go. Yeah. Now we got a little fuller screen. And this 10 meters is quite the jump too. Just that's up there.
Yeah, I'll give you a sense of it. Let me get some wide shots here too.
No. No allvarligt.
They're in Sweden, by the way.
Älskar dig. Det går inte. Oh shit.
Okay, now when he comes back up, listen to the conversation. Imagine this guy here is the change guy, and the guy climbing up the steps is like the counselor. Just imagine this for a second.
Gärna säger gå. Jag vill gärna säga gå, du vet. Men hjärtat vill inte göra det. Därifrån man så här.
Alltså vi jobbar tillsammans.
Hur känns det, Tobbe?
Alltså det är inte så farligt.
Gå du man, jag kommer efter. Jag kanske kommer imorgon. Jag hoppar upp, jag kommer efter. Jag vill inte hoppa tillsammans.
Nej, vi hoppas inte hela gången.
Nej, jag vill inte hoppa tillsammans man.
Jag kommer inte hoppa. Jag kommer inte hoppa, det räcker med mig.
Nej, hoppa på det.
Kör Jimmy.
Jag gillar att du står här man, jag stör mig. Gå ner. Hoppa eller gå ner, walla.
Chalas gå ner.
Nu, hoppa
Alltså
eller gå ner.
kolla.
Hoppa eller gå ner.
Kolla det är inte få.
Hoppa du så, hoppa eller gå ner, walla.
Ja, det är alldeles.
Han skit i honom. Hoppa eller gå ner, sätt ner.
Är du rädd? Är du rädd?
Nej. Bro, mitt hjärta säger nej, gör inte det här. Det är inte bra.
Då. Gå.
Ska jag gå ner? Man, tänk dig 190. Alltså jag är 60-70-åring. Hoppade. Men inte
Kör.
jag
jobbar tillsammans.
Jag hoppade. Jag vill inte hoppa, det är skämmigt.
Det är skämmigt, alla kollar på dig, alla väntar på dig.
Jag hoppade, jag kommer efter nu. Hoppa, jag kommer efter. Rör.
Nej, vi kommer inte göra det. Det räcker för mig.
Gå ner.
Jag kommer stanna på dig.
Nej, gå ner. Gå ner eller hoppa. Nej, om du hoppar, gå ner eller hoppa. Bestäm dig.
All right. That's like 16 minutes long, so I'll just stop there. I'm just curious from the group, what do you notice? I mean, just anything about this, you know, we're talking about motivational interviewing, ambivalence, and, you know, what if that was a counseling relationship? How did you think that went?
Hi, good afternoon or good morning. I think for me, initially, what I saw was the first person that went down and came up as the counselor. Of course, it's a lot easier if to counsel somebody if you've done it before, right? But
Absolutely.
but what I liked the analogy was let's jump together as a counseling, technique. Maybe let's both jump into this together.
So a little partnership. I mean, they're clearly buddies. They're, he's employing you can make that a technique of partnership, right? That's one of the aspects of motivational interviewing. So very interesting, right? There's some chats here coming in too. Attempt to come alongside, which is exactly. The guy with the ponytail was very patient and empathetic. So we're seeing a lot of goodwill coming from his buddy. He's like, come on, let's go, let's do it. So what about the client? How'd he do? Okay, I noticed the resistance as well, saying I'll do it later, things like that. he was literally coming alongside. How effective was that in helping this guy do his change, which was to jump off the thing? Not much. Lack of trust.
I think it put him
Okay.
in a fight or flight kind of response.
A little
where he
bit of,
would,
did you notice
Yeah.
his left arm was like entwined in the bar? Like he wasn't going anywhere. Exactly, Brenna, he grabbed the railing. So perfect. This is what we're seeing. This is going to be we're going to do a prolonged kind of breakdown exercise of one of the most classic experiences of MI that there is. It was invented by the founder. It's called a contrasting experience of MI. What we just witnessed is a really good example of what Bill Miller calls negative practice, which is just to say it's practice that we kind of normally do with each other. Like, you know, it's not bad. It's simply just what we do. It's a way of persuading, a way of kind of cajoling, of kind of nudging people into a change, just like we would talk with our friends or family. So what I'd like to do today, since this is an activity-based experience, is to take us through an experience of MI from in contrasting ways. The first would be in this way, where we're going to break into threes, hopefully. Let's see, we got 3 times 15. We should have enough. We could break into 3s or 4s, you think? Is it Jeff that's breaking them up or Steve?
I think it needs to be Steve.
Yeah, we can, we've got how many? We've got 24, so we
Can
can
you do that? 3 groups of 8?
Yeah, we can
Or
do
8 groups of 3?
8 groups of 3. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
So I'd just like to do this at first. I'm going to take us through some more slides, but just kind of the idea will be that we each take turns. So one person will be the person who's considering making a change, and I would invite you, if you feel comfortable, to take that thing that came up at the beginning in our reflection, something that's meaningful and real. Now, if it's too personal, please, no, don't use it. Do something like we're talking about, kind of a superficial but important level, like I need to work out more, I need to stop smoking, you know, whatever it is, but that it is a real source of feeling torn about something. And that we're going to take turns talking to each other in these styles. Okay. And I'm going to guide us through it. So, by the way, if you could get a pen and paper, a way to write something down, that's going to be important, just because in the breakout rooms, we can't put it up on a screen for all the breakout rooms. So while we do that, I'm going to share back on the screen into my slides. And I hope I picked the right screen. Which screen did I pick?
Yeah, just swap it around again. If you just do that display settings swap, let's see if it'll work for us this time. There we go. Beautiful.
Does that work?
Yep, you nailed it.
Okay, great.
Kevin, I was going to ask, so I'm going to go ahead and when on your cue, I'll put everybody in group rooms and then, or in breakout rooms, and then you can step out and I can plop you into any any of the breakout rooms you want to. If you want to check in on folks.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready for the breakout rooms.
You bet. So this is a quick overview. We're kind of presuming that there's familiarity with motivational interviewing in this. And I do want to have some time at the end in case that, you know, if you're brand new to this, you're like, what? That we can have a conversation with each other about the spirit of motivational interviewing. If you get nothing else out of any motivational interviewing conversation, it is that the spirit of MI is the most important piece. You may know techniques, you may know coming alongside, you may know double-sided reflections, you may know rolling with resistance, all of these kind of jargony type of technique names that we have for things that we do in motivational interviewing. But if you do not have the spirit, it will come across as ineffective. sometimes even phony, like you're trying to manipulate somebody. It needs to be, these techniques come out of a way of being. And you'll notice in this diagram where we have compassion, collaboration, acceptance, and evocation, that those three in the white, compassion, collaboration, and acceptance, those are essentially the classic principles of Carl Rogers' method, person-centered counseling. What motivational interviewing brings is the fourth circle, which we find in the south or in the bottom, evocation. My supervisor calls it Carl Rogers with teeth. Okay, so it's about being person-centered and yet guiding. And we use this word evocation to refer to that guidance. Three styles of communication. If you look at, this is all out of research that as they developed the text for motivational interviewing, they found that there's a directing style, a guiding style, and a following style. Motivational interviewing is not a set of rules. So it's not like, oh, you have to be a guide. And yet what we will find is that as we flow between these three styles, as if it's a continuum, there will be a time for teaching, instructing, and leading. There will be a time for following, where we simply listen. We simply our objective is to understand where the person is coming from. It's that going along or coming alongside, that engagement. Ultimately, we have in the back of our mind as an MI practitioner that we are going to come to this point of guidance. That if a person is ambivalent with mixed feelings about a particular change that they really should make, they know they should make it, then motivational interviewing says, well, we have an obligation then to guide that person to that change. And what I've highlighted in red, the phrase drawing out, that is another way of saying evocation. So when I say I'm a compassionate, collaborative, and accepting practitioner, I also want to be evocative, and that my way of being is emphasizing, I want to draw out from you your own reasons for making the change. You might not even know you have them. And yet, by engaging this style of simply having a conversation in a manner that is very person-centered, right, and yet committed to positive change, MI says this will be a product. You will find that people will start giving you reasons to change. There's no reason for us to give it to them. So we're gonna start with a open-ended activity. You don't need to know any techniques. You simply need to follow the structure of the exercise. We got the persuade me exercise. So this will be an example of what Bill calls the negative practice. We're going to go into triads instead of pairs. So you have two people having the conversation and one person observing, and then we're going to debrief it afterwards. Okay, everybody's going to get a turn. Yes, Steve?
There might be a couple with just groups of two, because it looks
No
like
problem.
Looks like
We
we're
can
at
roll with that.
21.
You could even stack them in as fours too. I mean, that's fine as well. You
Yeah.
don't want to. So this is where pen and paper comes out. I need you to write down 12 different lines, because there's going to be kind of a script that we follow. It's a very structured way of having a conversation. So it's called the 12 Roadblocks to Change. So this is basically examples of how we engage with each other in a way that isn't really evocative. Okay, so I'm going to just go through. I put a slide for each one of these so we can just take the time to write them down. The first one is ordering, directing, or commanding. So maybe just write that down and then we'll get to the next one. These are categories of like things you can say to somebody.
Yeah.
Another one would be warning. Like, ooh, mean, threatening is an extreme example of this category, warning or threatening. And then we have this one, giving advice, AKA making suggestions, AKA providing solutions.
Yeah.
Another one would be just simple persuasion, using logic, having a philosophical argument with somebody about it, maybe even gets into lecturing, you know, kind of maybe a parenting tone. And there is a difference between motivational interviewing and parenting. That might be a whole conversation. Telling clients what they should do. If you've ever heard of the tyranny of the shoulds, don't should all over yourself. Well, we don't want to should all over them. So moralizing, preaching. You know, I remember I had a Red Bull. I'm just going to confess, I don't drink it anymore, but I had a Red Bull at table in the staff meeting, and somebody said, my mom's a nurse and she's told, and I shut down at my mom's a nurse. I don't even remember what she said after that. I did take another big gulp right at her though. There's disagreeing, judging, criticizing, and blaming. Agreeing, approving, praising. It's a potential roadblock. Blaming, shaming, ridiculing, of course. It's really roadblocks to listening, interpreting or analyzing. How about reassuring, consoling, sympathizing? I could see how that would be hard for you. And of course, there's always, you know, this is it's almost a trap. If we don't know what to do, just ask a bunch of questions. Questioning or probing. It's the assessment trap, where if we're in an assessment, we have to ask a bunch of questions. That's not what we're talking about here. It's more just about the roadblocks to actually listening to someone. And finally, changing the subject. You know, whataboutism. That could also include withdrawing or distracting. So now with this, hopefully you'll have a list of things you can say in a conversation. I'm going to invite you to go into groups of 3 and try this out. Try it out on each other. It's only going to be a few minutes each, where you basically practice engaging a person in talking about something they want to change, and do it through a lens of these roadblocks to change. And it's not intended to be a drama exercise. It's really intended to be just, we are being the way we would normally be with friends, kind of like those guys on the diving board. And that these 12 categories are clues or little signals of how things you could say to be that way. So my challenge would be, try to get as many of them in as you can in a 3 to 5 minute chunk of time. And so everybody will pick a role. Somebody will be the counselor, somebody will be the client, and somebody will be an observer. And the observer simply watches for, how is this person being inspired to change? Sometimes it happens in this exercise. So it's not intended to be, oh, this doesn't work. Sometimes it works. You might persuade somebody, you know? You might sympathize with them, and that's what they needed. It's not necessarily about, does it work or not? It's about, how effective is this in general, and what does it feel like? Okay. Any questions before we start breaking out into groups? I will jump in and just like check in with y'all, but I'm also gonna put a timer on this so we don't end up going off the rails, because there is a flip side to this where we do the MI version of it. So can we split them up now and start it? Okay. When you get into your groups, just go ahead and get started. And I'll keep a timer and I'll let you know when to switch. Hey, I jumped rooms, we checked in. I think that's enough to give you a taste of like the idea of what we were aiming at there. Elizabeth even made an astute comment in the chat. It's tough to be anti-MI when you're MI trained. You know, it's it's like, it's tough to have a head full of AA and a belly full of booze. Yeah, that's the ultimate ambivalence right there. So I appreciate your willingness, Elizabeth, to engage in that. I'd like to maybe from that point of view, I mean, the intention of that exercise is just to kind of stir it up, you know, questions, concerns. Let's have a conversation about the negative practice, and then we'll finish the move, because there's the MI practice that we'll lean into that hopefully will give us an experience that really lets it sink in what the spirit of MI is about. But before that, I want to focus on, if you had the role of the person making the change, okay, the one that was getting MI done, not to, because we don't talk that way, but you know, you're the client. If you had that role at all, what was it like to be in that conversation just now?
I guess it was awkward for me at first to be in that conversation. I was the one that had to share.
You were the one that had to share. Yeah, awkward at first.
I trained, and then also more traditional based. So, you know, cultural traditional based. And going from the elders' perspective of trying to nudge them, like, am I, into their own finding of and free will and choices, to kind of get a resi knowing where the people are at today. And sometimes you just got to tell them what's up.
That's right.
Yeah, and if you do, you're going to have one or two responses. It's going to be shutdown time and oppositional disorder, or it is thanks for spanking me. I needed a mommy right there, grandma.
There you go. And hey, there's nothing from MI's point of view, that's not necessarily wrong, right?
That's right.
Sometimes that is the indicated response, depending on the context. Sure. I appreciate that. Thank you, Teresa. Who else? Elizabeth says, MI is a tool in the toolbox. Doesn't always work in a given situation. This is true. This is true. This is one of the basic teachings in a MI class, is that it is specifically designed for a situation where you're in a position to help somebody else. You are not their family member. It's like a client and a professional. It doesn't have to be counseling. We were just talking about being a mediator in family court. Perfect situation. Holy crap. Absolutely. Gilbert, do you have experience of that you would be willing to share? Like, you have experience of MI?
Yeah, we actually, they did send us to an MI training as mediators. We had brought up, you know, the fact that you can get more change if you have the relationship with the person that you're negotiating with, versus if you're coming in as this court-appointed official who's going to tell them how their life should be run, and using those scaling questions, and also finding out, does there need to be some kind of apology before we can even move forward, right? Like, how can they build their relationship so that they can both start on a neutral ground?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if there was ever ambivalence, you know, any place where you're in a situation where there's the law, where you know, the government is involved in some way, shape, or form. You know, I'm familiar with working with DUIs a lot. It's the percentage of the clientele that come through on a regular basis. Would they have normally chosen to come in? No. Somebody else told them. They got the nudge from the judge. Fun fact, research shows that nudge from the judge, or I bring myself in to a treatment situation, the odds are exactly the same for a positive outcome. What drives the outcome is not the person, but the system that they're coming into. So if the system that they're coming into is person-centered and collaborative and evocative, then they're going to have a very high, well, they're going to have a better chance at a positive outcome than if they're coming at it from what we just did, which is kind of the, well, the roadblocks to change as it were. I heard it put that there's no such thing as mandated, or there is. It's either there is or there is not. There is mandated, but everybody's mandated. So even if I bring myself in, I'm mandating myself to go to treatment. A judge is mandating, then they're mandated into treatment, mandated versus voluntary. From a motivational interviewing perspective, we see them not as either of those. We see them as ambivalent. They come in, they bring themselves in voluntarily, they will have mixed feelings about it. How do you know? You'll hear it in the conversation. I know I need to stop, but I have hangovers. I know I need to stop, but these cravings are just killing me. I don't know what to do. I want to stop for my kids. And then they go out and they have a drink and they come back. That's a sign of ambivalence, right? From a motivational interviewing point of view, it's almost a universal precaution that behavior, even if it's non-compliant behavior, is considered a manifestation of ambivalence rather than a character defect, right? And that even if the one exception to that perspective is that if the conversation becomes personal. So if the client starts talking, instead of talking about themselves and their change, they start talking about me as the client, as their counselor. Like, well, you don't understand me. Why did you just say that? You're making me do this. Those are what we would call, like, those are the red flags. Those are the smoke alarms. That's a sign where, okay, MI has stopped and we need to stop it down and repair what they call discord. Okay, but that would be the only situation where we would not look at it as, okay, this is simply ambivalence manifesting, right? So I engage their ambivalence, even if they go out, they say they're committed to not drinking, and they go out and drink and come back and say that they relapse. It's not a failure. It's simply the universal experience of ambivalence. Any other just reflections over that negative practice piece of it?
Kevin, I really like that. And one of the things that was made aware to me early on in my days as a clinician was to sort of resist this urge as a helper to want to solve and resolve. And it's very strong, at least for me, the urge to want to solve the problem for the patient.
Yes.
Very, very, and what it does is it sets me up to become sort of the one making them do something, which is counter to MI's spirit. And then the other thing for me was pointed out to me was I shouldn't condone behaviors, but I also shouldn't condemn them or thoughts or decisions. And then the last one is just really reminding the patient that it's really up to them.
That's right.
And giving them that efficacy. And one of the greatest things that I remember doing and it was so difficult at first, but to ask the patient what they like about their alcohol use, or tell me what you like about your cannabis use. And it
That's right.
just seemed like I was asking them to highlight things when really what I was trying to do was explore with them some of the underlying reasons why they started using in the first
Yeah,
place.
it almost feels like blatant enabling in a way.
It really was
ask that.
difficult. Yeah, it took me a while to see the bigger picture. So I'll shut up, but I wanted to just put a couple of those ideas out there.
Absolutely.
For
Very
those
much
that are new to
appreciate
the
that.
field, or yes, exactly, Teresa, it feels unethical or irresponsible to
Excellent
ask
point.
questions like that.
How does the slide look, Steve? Are we good on is it shared properly?
Yeah, just swap them again. Just do your
Really? It
yeah, just
swaps
do your-
every single time.
I know it does the same thing to me. Trust me. I know
So
this through experience.
What Steve was just talking about was actually my next slide. We're right in sync, which is in MI that all of that is referred to as the writing reflex. This is literally a reflex. So like, when you hit your knee with that little hammer, the doctor, knee shoots up. This is not a conscious thing. There is an impulse, a desire to fix what somebody says, what seems wrong with them, and get them on a better course. We want to help them, and that way of helping is by writing them, setting them right. The image is a canoe. So we're facing each other in a canoe, and the client pushes down on one side of the canoe and tips it toward the water line. I reflexively want to grab the other side of that canoe and right it. So it's like it's a nautical term, the writing reflex. We all do it. And when it comes up, if you've ever experienced it, you'll know it. The goal is often positive when we do this. It's to understand, fix, diagnose, or control. As Steve just alluded to, the participant, especially in the MI language, the participant needs to be listened to, understood, and needs to be the source of the solution. And by engaging in a writing reflex, I am injecting my solution into their life. And that is, from an MI point of view, it's less effective than taking the stance of a guide, somebody who comes alongside, who understands that there is wisdom, reasons to change. Everything that they need to change is already inside of them. It just needs to come out. And that's where this term evocation comes from. Again, it's the fourth bottom circle in the diagram around the spirit of MI, drawing out the participant's own desire, drawing out their own reasons, not mine. I want them to change. I'm going to keep that in check and meet them where they're at, because maybe they are like down. Maybe they feel like the chips are down, even though they're showing up, they're not feeling it. Well, I'm not going to be overly enthusiastic trying to get them to feel better. That'd be a writing reflex. I'm going to meet them right where they're at. You feel down today. You've been going through a lot. And then allow space where that person can contribute their own experience. Drawing out the participant's own desire and reasons for change before the education, before the advocation. That can come later. When they need it, they'll ask for it. A little bit of a review here that this is kind of an artificial way of looking at how MI is set up. These are stair steps. Okay, so step one's on the bottom. Engaging. We gotta establish, right? And that's kind of what the activities are based on today. If you learn nothing else in an MI training, engagement. There's only 4 moves, by the way, in motivational interviewing. There's open questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. It's called OARS, OARS. Those are the 4 kind of conversational tools that we use in each one of these 4 processes. they just become more and more strategic. The more connected, the deeper we go with an individual, we'll start noticing. We go from an engagement point of view, we're in a working relationship. It'll warm up a bit, and then we can guide them into a focus. So I see that you got several things you might be wanting to look at today. Maybe they're coming in there to a drug and alcohol treatment place, but really what they want to focus on is smoking, right? And they assume that it's because it's drug and alcohol, and you know, nicotine's the last legal high, that they don't want to talk about that, but it comes up and it sounds like that's really what's bugging them. They got emphysema, they're in the pandemic, they're most focused, they're here for a DUI. Well, they know that they need to be there, but what they really want to focus on is their smoking. Then that's where we go with them. You might experience a conflict there in that example. I work for an agency that's a drug and alcohol agency. This person wants to talk about a focus that isn't part of my agency's agenda. Well, what do I do there? You know, that's always attention. And to me, it's like I've found that in the conversation with people understand how to navigate that, right? You can always document a change plan, a focus that is in line with the agency's agenda, that is also congruent with what the person wants to be doing, right? But that doesn't mean that in the actual conversation, we have to, you know, artificially keep it limited to an external agenda. It really needs to come from inside of them. That focusing piece emerges as one of the most important parts of MI. If you can get to a place where you say to a client, so what I hear you saying is, you want to focus on blank, fill in the blank with whatever it is. And they respond to you affirmative, yes. A specific, measurable, attainable, like a behavioral goal is ideal. It doesn't have to be, but you know, the more concrete and clear it is, the more effective the next phase can be, which is the teeth of MI, right? That part where we draw out the reasons for change. We can't draw out the reasons for change if we don't know which change we're talking about. So it seems so obvious. And in practice, when like even in my own practice, when I was learning this, we would, you know, you get a coach and you do a lot of recording of like sample sessions, and then the coach will go listen to the sessions and give you some feedback. And the feedback I got at the very beginning more than anything else was, what is the focus of this? Have great engaging conversations with people. Like, you know, I'm a good counselor. They're happy. I'm happy. We walk out of the session, the coach goes and listens to it and is not quite clear on what was the change that we were talking about. Could be that there are multiple changes that they're looking at. And so it becomes this is one example of where we are a guide. That if it's unclear what we're talking about, then that's just a sign that we need to keep engaging, and it will come out in the conversation. Okay, so it ends up being a slow process. Another way of looking at this, of all of MI, is just making relations with ambivalence. We're talking about that state of mind where we got a conflict about something. It's a pretty abhorrent state of mind to be in. The human mind wants to resolve it, even if that means the short form of the Serenity Prayer. Everybody, you know what that is, right? F it. You know, I'm going backwards. You know what? This is too hard. Like the guy on the platform, I'm going to walk down the steps. That is a resolution of ambivalence, psychologically. MI wants to help somebody go that other direction where they make the leap. They make their own leap, though. I'm not going to push them off. I'm not going to grab their hand. I'm not even going to jump with them. I might come alongside them and look down there with them, but I'm just going to stay with them in their experience and allow them the choice. They can walk down those stairs, but that we're going to be biased in helping them resolve that ambivalence in the direction that they want to go, that they aspire to go to. sort of that high dive is just like, it's a poignant example. Any questions here? I know I'm talking a lot. I'm ramping up for the exercise. We're drawing out the wisdom of the patients, of the participants.
Would you say to somebody when you're helping them, when they say something like, it's too much, I can't do it, would you feel comfortable with saying, okay, let's weigh out the positives and the negatives of that choice?
You bet. So kind of similar to what Steve was saying, that that could be a very effective way, especially if somebody is feeling overwhelmed and like, oh, I'm going to give up, I can't do this. Okay, what they're telling you is, we're going too fast. We're too fast into this process. If you go back to this slide, you can think of it this way. If I'm trying to get somebody, I'm in the red with somebody, I'm in this evoking place where I'm trying to get their reasons to change. And they're actually thinking like, holy crap, I just realized that we're looking at me changing something important in my life. They're in the green. They might not even be in the green. That might even scare them to where they want to back out. And if you get that signal from them, totally normal, not a sign of failure in any way, shape, or form. This is to be expected. And what happens when we encounter that is, in my mental MI brain goes, okay, I need to back it up to the yellow. I'm going to come all the way back to those basic reflections, right? Where I'm just right alongside a person. So I'm not going to be pressuring them because they're feeling pressured, where it's coming from me or it's coming from them. Something's up. If they're like, I can't do this, they're feeling overwhelmed. That would be, in fact, that would probably be the reflection. I would instead, we can definitely get into, we might need to get into, here's the reasons you feel torn about this. Here's the positives, here's the negatives. Well, they will say that. You can ask them, what are the things you get out of this? What are what's the upside to using? And the reason for asking that is you have to make a genuine change, it has to be fully informed. So the way that MI would do that is to focus on there's the positives of changing. There's also the positives of not changing, but then you always end on the positives of changing. So it's like, on one hand, it's, I get relief from drinking. On the other hand, it causes destruction in my life. And that would be like an example of a reflection. But in an example like you're talking, Teresa, it's quite frequent that people will feel like this is too much. And it really is just to meet them where they're at, change the temperature of the conversation by backing up and staying in engagement. And that can feel really tough if you feel your own agenda, right? So if your agenda in an agency, for example, is, okay, we got to get to this plan, we got to get in the blue, and we're still in the, we just backed up to the yellow. That happens all the time. So there's, it can feel conflictual as the practitioner, that it's too slow, but often MI comes across as a very slow process. It feels slow to us, it doesn't to them. So from that point of view, we're going to take a taste of MI. There's a little picture of the actual book. All of everything that I'm saying is taken out of this book, by the way, and you don't eat it. It's just on a page, just on a plate, just as an image. So we're going to do the same exercise. Was there a question?
I just was saying thank you for that clarification.
Oh, yeah, it's just because it's the name of the exercise. The founder is William R. Miller, and he calls this the taste of MI. So this is an ancient classic exercise. So we're going to do the same exercise. Use the same topic as last time, something you were thinking about changing. And You'll have, in your group, you'll decide who's going to be the person who talks about their change, who's going to be the counselor or the professional, and who's going to be the observer. There's going to be questions that I'm going to have you write down, actually, just because we don't have handouts. You usually do this in person. And there's going to be a script that you follow as the counselor. And the goal is to listen carefully and just understand what their dilemma is. So we don't need to make them change. We're just going to try to understand their dilemma. So we're going to slow it way down. And of course, experience the impulse to give advice and try to refrain from it. Okay. So here's the script. Ever have a dilemma about you sit down with somebody cold and you're like, okay, what's the first thing you say? Right. So this is what I say to most times when I sit down with somebody, whether I know them or not. And that can feel awkward. Where shall we start? It seems like kind of innocuous, like just a nudge to start the conversation, which is what it is. It's really cueing the person to start talking, right? It's an open-ended question. It's the first letter of the acronym OARS, O-A-R-S. So this is actually the first line in the script. And what I'd invite you to do is, even at this point, allow them to speak. Even if it's uncomfortable, awkward silence, and they're like, I don't know. Be ready for that. And if they say, I don't know, maybe give them a nudge. It's like, is there something you're looking to change? We kind of have that understanding. So don't give them a hard time, clients. Don't be an impossible client, but this is the cue to start talking. But they might start talking, and let them talk. If you notice something that stands out to you, perhaps you can try to reflect back to them. If you get a moment's pause to speak, you can say a reflection instead of a question, just to keep them talking, because the idea is to keep them talking. And if you find they give you a reason to change, you can just say, that seems like a reason to change, or just say it back to them. Here's the next line of the script. Okay, so write this one down too. Why would you want to make the change? Okay. If you decide to make the change, how would you go about it in order to succeed? That's the third line. These are literally from Bill Miller. These are his questions for people who are just trying to begin MI. Okay. Fourth line. What are the 3 best reasons for you to do it? These are all questions, notice. They're open questions. One might say evocative. They're designed to draw out reasons to change from people. That's the whole point. So these are really good MI interventions. I'm going to skip that one just for the purpose of time. And then at the very end, if you got time to do this, ask for permission. Would it be okay if I just tried to sum up, give a summary of what you heard? And then you ask, is there anything that I left out? Okay. So let's break into groups and try this. And in this one, I would encourage you to stick to the lines of the script. Again, with the idea that if you run out of gas on one question, then move on to the next one. The idea is that they do a lot of talking, you do a lot of listening. Okay, let's break them up.
Well, we're back. We're right at the bottom of the hour. I think, Kevin, if you'd like to just maybe summarize and process a little.
You bet. So,
There.
you know, speakers, if you had the chance of being a speaker in that exercise, I just want to honor that, the vulnerability that you took in taking a risk about being ambivalent about it. And I did want to open up just space if anyone had anything they wanted to reflect on that by way of debriefing.
Hi, I'm Brianna.
Brianna,
Video, if it will let me. It's
there you
sorry.
go.
Okay. So I think it was really great. I did take a lot from it. I've done a lot of training on motivational interviewing, but nothing like to where I could do hands-on. So it like didn't really mean much to me until doing this.
Yes.
So thank you. And also it
Okay.
was a little hard to resist making a suggestion. So like that's the thing you have to teach yourself. But it was more
Okay.
effective. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
It's
Appreciate
hard.
Brianna.
It's hard to resist the dark side of the force. It really is. It's
That really was the goal of today, is just to give you a taste of that hands-on. This is what it's like to practice it. And that's what I know we have noticed, that it kind of becomes missing when there's just a talking head. So we got a little bit of a taste of practicing it. So I really appreciate that, you guys. And my contact information is out there. You can get it through Steve. If you're interested in going deeper in this, there's all kinds of opportunities out there. So, oh, that's what I got. Any other, I mean, Steve, I know we're at the bottom of the hour, so I don't want to go.
we've reached our allotted time. I want to honor your schedule and everyone else's. I'm going to post my my contact information there at our center. And Kevin, maybe we'll have you back, you know, again for a follow-up on this, and we can maybe revisit some of the slides.
I mean, absolutely. Like we could even just kind of cut to the chase, like no lecture, just start practicing more.
Start practicing. That's right. Jump right in.
Practicing reflections. I love that idea. So it's like open gym for MI.
Well, I want to just again thank you. I'm honored to be with you and everyone else today. Thank you all for your time, and we'll be back again and broadcast next month for our next behavioral health webinar, and maybe we'll have Kevin back. Maybe do something first part of 22. Yes, I said 22, ladies and gentlemen. It's
amazing.
Coming. It's coming. Anyway, until then, look for our follow-up email. And we'll see you again out there in the virtual world. Stay safe, stay connected, and stay healthy. Love you guys. Take care.
Take care.